Okay, so I now have the pleasure of introducing our first panel of the day, our CEO panel, which is sponsored by the AC Group. This panel is comprised of 4 exceptional leaders, and I would like to thank them for sharing their valuable time with us today. I will introduce our panelists and follow with a series of questions designed to help students gain insight into the world of executive management. There will be time afterwards for student questions. So we have Chief Terry Paul, Chief and CEO of Membertou. We have Elizabeth Murphy, CEO of the SPCA Nova Scotia, Philip Mondor, President and CEO of Tourism HR Canada, and Joanne Bernard, CEO of Easter Seals, Nova Scotia. Please give our panelists a welcome round of applause. Now on to the first question. Could each of you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your education, and your career path to your current position?
Thank you. Yeah, my educational background is, I think, mostly come from the streets. But when I graduated from high school, I went on to move up to Boston because back home there wasn't any jobs at all. And in Boston, I've learned during my stays there in the summer as a summer student. You could get jobs anywhere in Boston. So although there were the entry-level positions in their factory work, but it was work that we never had back home. And I guess I got used to getting a paycheck during the summer months. So during my stay, I ended up going to the Boston Indian Council, and it's an indigenous service organization that served about 30 different tribes in Boston that were, I would say they were transient, like they were passing through, or they were students, or they were in the military. So during my time at the Boston Indian Council, I learned a lot about community development and community service, and I also ended up in the management and the finance department of the organization. So I took courses at a local community college sponsored by the Boston Indian Council, and I took finance and management courses, which really helped me a lot when I came back home. And when I come back home, things were pretty well the same as when I left, and that was about 7 years earlier. And there was big problems. So from what I learned in Boston and the courses that I took, it really helped me to get our community, our administration organized. There wasn't even any policies or procedures or administrative policies and procedures. So that was one of the first things that we got together and put a good management plan together. In fact, we became ISO 9001 certified. One of the first indigenous communities in Canada, at least maybe the world, to have that certification. And when we got that certification, that gave us it's instant credibility, because you really have to work hard to get that certification. And I remember one example is that the day that we announced that we had that certification, there was a multinational aerospace firm calling us, asking us if we wanted to be partner with them to bid on at that time there was a helicopter contract out there. And by the way, we didn't get it. But the point is, and they said that themselves when they called, they said they would not have called us if we didn't have that certification. So that was proof that that type of certification for an organization or a company moves you ahead tremendous amount of steps. So we, got moved on, got ourselves together, and we decided, like after a time when we were having a council meeting, we were facing a $1 million deficit with a $8 million budget. So with that, we decided to change. We had to change. We couldn't keep the status quo the way it was. So we got ourselves really organized, got really good people. I hired a lot of people that are smarter than me. I think that's a really good, way to look at things. And they share the same vision. And with that vision, we were able to get to where we are today, which is a very flourishing Indigenous community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Murphy, Nova Scotia of the SPCA, or CEO of the Nova Scotia SPCA. So a little bit about myself. So I grew up actually in northern BC in a small town. I was surrounded by even smaller communities with people who were struggling. Basically what I'm trying to say is that growing up in a small northern community, I had privilege and I recognized my privilege. And so I think that with my upbringing, I went to some very small schools and I bounced between public schools and private schools, basically able to be witness to all different types of living conditions. People struggle regardless. But I think that being exposed to that, it made me realize that I wanted to make a difference in the communities that I lived in. And I think it's because of my privilege. At a young age, I recognized that I was very comfortable sort of putting up my hand. I was comfortable pointing out times when I would see injustice or when things weren't fair. I was able to do that because of my privilege, because I was safe, because I knew that when I went home that I would be protected. And so from those experiences, I ended up going to University of Northern British Columbia and working towards, I did things like anthropology and human geography, which I've always been interested in what motivates people. So, and that's sort of, I'm very manipulative. I think it's a good thing. Babies are manipulative. You just use your power for good and not evil. But I basically started working from there in underprivileged communities as a substitute teacher. I worked for small organizations, so HIV/AIDS became a thing when I was entering the work world. There was quite a lot of stigma attached to it. It was difficult to fill those positions. I was up for it. And so there was a lot of opportunities that I'd had, but I've always been aware of the opportunities that I've been given and the privilege I've had in my life. And so I'm just going to recheck the question, stick to it. Yeah, so I worked for small not-for-profits growing up. What I realized is that typically it's all about money at the end of the day. And so I honed my skill and utilized and leveraged the relationships that I had to generate revenue for the organizations that I worked for. And I kept along that path. So I ended up working for a university in the development office. Had a lot of opportunities there to hone my skill to raise funds. Then took that back to the smaller not-for-profits that I had a passion for. And built my career from there. So I have actually worked for Nova Scotia, Easter Seals, Nova Scotia. I've worked for a lot of, like I say, not-for-profits. wanting to make a difference in my community. And I've been with the Nova Scotia SPCA for the past 10 years. We have grown from an organization who, I could tell stories as well about a bit of the chaos, but we've grown from basically a small organization with a budget of around $600,000 to now we have annual budgets of approximately $12 million. That's it.
Well, good morning, everyone. I feel like there's already some common threads coming through these discussions. Well, my name is Philip Mondor. I am President and CEO of Tourism HR Canada, which is a national organization whose mandate is to help address labor market issues in the sector, which is quite large. It's about 10% of the workforce across Canada, with workers in absolutely every riding in Canada. So where did I start? Well, literally before I could walk, I was working in the sector. My parents owned a business in a very remote, small community, which effectively was known as the hub. It was basically what we would call today the sort of tourism anchor of the community. It was the retail center, it was the restaurant, it was everything. And I mean, there are pictures of my sister and I pricing cans sitting on the floor before we could even walk. So in a way, I think, it's been a lifetime pursuit in some respects. But to jump forward, when it was time to go to university, that's really when one starts to make decisions on what do you want to do. And I was focused on, my interest actually was on human behavior. I was very curious about what made people tick and why they behaved the way they did. Bit of a geek and a bit of a weird thing, but I entered university starting in 3 different disciplines because I couldn't make a decision. I was in physics, I was in social sciences, and I was in fine arts. How's that for a mix? But in the end, my real push ended up being in the social sciences area, and most of my studies are in the field of psychometrics, which is a big fancy word for saying basically the study and measurement of people behavior. So it kind of was the path in some respects set out early days. But it brings me to what my job is today. Of course, putting myself through university meant working in the industry. It was convenient, it was easy to do. I basically had the skills to do so. And in my first summer pre-university, trying to earn that heavy money, I quickly discovered that the pace of working for someone else, not for the family company, and the demands on the schedule were not very well suited to me because of my interest in making sure I pursued studies well. So when you hit that period of time, I was quick to say I was not going to continue working. I wanted to go down to 0 hours kind of thing. But in the end, my employer wanted to hold on to me, and what I fundamentally did was just become an independent consultant. And I put myself through university working for a number of different companies with basically helping with HR and operational issues. And when I was near the end of that cycle, I was asked to come and work with the organization I do today. So from Manitoba to Ottawa to work on a federal exercise to help set standards of practice for the industry, and it went from there. So that's my quick snapshot of a picture. There's a whole lot more I can add to that, but I don't want to occupy more time. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I used to write exams in this room, so I'm very comfortable in between these walls. Born and raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I always knew that I would somehow be involved with politics someday. So we'll just park that for a second. So I came to the Mount and I did my BA here in political science. I was a single mother on income assistance with a small son. And then I decided, well, I'm going to go to Acadia and do my master's. And it was an accelerated master's, which means it was a year. And during the course of that year, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer and died on my Christmas vacation. And he was 59 years old. As of last week, I turned 60, and I have outlived both of my parents. I have come to that realization, and that's not something you want to do sometimes. And from Acadia, did my master's in political science. My mom died in a car accident during the writing of my thesis. So it was just my son and I. And so I found a home very comfortable in the nonprofit sector. So I founded and developed the Marguerite Center, which is the only facility for women recovering from addictions and abuse in Nova Scotia. And then I moved to Alice Housing, where I was executive director for 9 years. And then in 2013, on my 50th birthday, it seems I do things every 10 years, it was right politically, personally, and professionally to run for office. So I did, and I was successful as the member of the legislature for Dartmouth North. And I was named to cabinet by former Premier Stephen McNeil, and I was now in charge of the Community Services Department, which was the very department which helped me get to where I was that day, because I had taken advantage of many of the programs during my time here at the Mount. I was also Minister of Housing, Status of Women, and the Disabled Persons Commission. So I did that for 4 years until 2017. During that time, I was also the first openly gay cabinet minister, member of the Legislative Assembly in the history of the province, which I was always very proud of. It was a journey. I faced a lot of homophobia and misogyny, and I talk about that extensively in conferences, anywhere I'm invited to speak about those experiences. In 2017, not re-elected, okay. Then the opportunity for Easter Seals Nova Scotia came about, and I had been very, very familiar with the organization, having done their drop zone in 2014 when I was minister, and I really liked the work that they did. So I've been there since 2017. I have taken the organization farther than they've ever been, and I'm not being, I'm not being big in the head, but that's one of the things as a female, you have to acknowledge your successes, and taking it from a small or back of the building attached to Kempsters on Kemp Road to its own standalone building with expansions across the province is something I'm proud of, and something that you should always strive for, to leave the organization that you lead better shape than when you found it. So that's where I am right now. I can't stay for the day because we are actually on the road to Yarmouth tonight. We've been nominated by the Chamber of Commerce down there for our programs in Yarmouth. And I hope you have a good day. And I just want to say I do have business cards. If I'm not here, you can always reach me at Easter Seals. Thank you.
Thank you all for your insight into your backgrounds. Could you describe a key factor that you feel has significantly influenced your success?
If I were to use just one word, it would be consistency. And we have a dream and we have visions in Membertou, for sure, and as long as you work at that dream every day, that helps having that part of that success. So being consistent in what you're doing, it's a lot of the projects just don't come to you. You have to work hard to achieve and to be successful in that. And I found out that being consistent and being there for the people and for the staff helps us move a lot better. So I think that being true to your dream or vision, and and the idea of giving up shouldn't be there at all. Like, I know I do that, like wondering if it's really worth it. But when you have the dream, that it helps you do the things that you want to do, and with a really good staff with you, that breeds success. Thank you.
So I think my first instinct is to say something like integrity and empathy. When I think about the question, I actually believe what has allowed me to be successful is my ability to take risk and my hard work. So those things go hand in hand. If we just look at the Nova Scotia SPCA, I believe in knowledgeable consent with my board. There have been a lot of things that we have accomplished over the past 10 years. And you know, when you start out with an organization and you're working on projects, when you're starting out in an industry, it is important to work hard to make sure that you're reaching your goals and objectives. And that can only happen when you're working really hard. And then as you're successful with those smaller projects, you have the ability, you have more of a comfort zone within yourself, but people will also allow you to take the risks that are necessary in order to move an organization or to move a project forward. So I am very comfortable with risk, but it is also because of my background in development. When you understand how to diversify and generate revenues, you have a comfort that the money will be there, so you're comfortable to take those risks. And again, when you build a team and when you yourself work hard, and you build a team that also is aligned with your goals and you're working hard together, it allows you to be successful. So those are the things, I think, that were mine.
I guess there's two thoughts that come to mind. I mean, first, I just have to say that I'm noticing on this national panel, there's similar sentiments I would make myself. I mean, there's a feeling here of overcoming a sense of adversity or a challenge, and I guess that's where my answer was going to come from. In terms of what significantly influenced my success, I would say, is singularly a major event in my working career when I was quite young, pre-university, and working for an employer who was really bad, frankly. That experience was so difficult. I said to myself, no one should ever be subject to this kind of behavior and live with these circumstances moving forward. So I kind of made it a mission of sorts to deal with that. And part of it as well was acknowledging that, you know, it's not valuable looking back so much as focusing on what's needed to do moving forward, looking for things that were meaningful, and you know, you're always going to encounter some of those challenges, but in the end, it's more how you overcome them and what matters. So I would share similar comments that were made, but honestly, that singular event of working for that very difficult, problematic employer really made me feel that this is not deserved by anyone else, and that kind of catapulted me into the field where I am today.
I agree. I've worked for many bad employees. You can learn from them.
Never be afraid of change. In fact, try to get a reputation as a change maker. And that's very hard to do in this province. We are a province that continually takes 10-foot leaps over 5-foot leaps over 10-foot gaps. Change is hard for many of us in this province. Always look at, one of the things that I always look at when starting new projects or anything like that is I do an appreciative inquiry, which means I focus on the things that went right. I don't focus on the things that went bad. I focus on what went right, and then I build from that, because I've already got the path forward in front of me. So why would I look at why things went bad? One of my personal mottos is, if it matters, you measure it. You always measure what you do, whether it's in delivering a program, leading a department. Make sure that at the end of the day, what you've set out to do is working and you've reached your goals. And if they don't reach their goals, find out why. and make the appropriate changes, and focus on what went right and make those changes based on that. So it's constantly building on the positive. But I'm a big believer in being the change in an organization. The worst thing that you can say to me anytime, any place, anywhere is, oh, but we've always done it that way. That is the death knell for a business, for organizations, anything like that. It just really is not a good way to lead, not a good way to build, not a good way to change. Thanks.
Can you describe your best and worst day in your current position?
To me, every day is a good day on the job when you love what you do. So most of the time, it doesn't even feel like work. It just love what I do and what we're able to accomplish as a team. So when looking at my time, there's a lot of real good days. Like, I mean, acquiring Clearwater Seafood's a $1 billion company. I mean, and good day. Really, it was a good day, but not the best day. To me, my best day, like it was historical, country-changing decision that was made by the Supreme Court of Canada, and that was the fishing case of Donald Marshall Jr. And that day, we very shocked, but very, very happy, and thinking that our future is finally secure, because we'd be able to fish for food and fish for a living. But it turns out it's not as easy as that. So that was my best day, that decision. And I'd say my worst day was when our fishermen had guns pointed at them to get them out of the water. Very, very concerning, very serious. And that certainly was an incident that keeps us out of the water to this day, to exercise and implement this decision. So we have a ways to go. We don't give up. We're fishing, and what we would want is for sure to have peace in the waters. Not just saying it, but we need to actively accomplish that by sitting down with respect, and then come up with a solution where we all can fish and live peacefully. Thank you.
So when I started with the Nova Scotia SPCA, I was hired, and there was a panel series of interviews, company involved. About 2 months in, I have my executive looking at me. 4 days in, I traveled to a shelter, and essentially, what I'm trying to say is that when I started for the Nova Scotia SPCA, I was under the impression that it was one provincial organization. I was hired and in the position for about a month, and when it was made clear to me that there was a bunch of branches who didn't work closely together. So in actuality, I had 11 boards that I was trying to deal with, 11 shelters, 11 groups of staff who did not work in concert with each other, who didn't really even know each other. And I basically realized that I had a responsibility to formally merge this organization under one umbrella. So my best day was in 2016 when we officially merged under the one umbrella, all of us being the Nova Scotia SPCA. And so we have, we would have like 11 branches. There were 6 shelters, so it was a very discombobulated group of people. an organization. So my best day was when this organization merged and we could work together to help animals to be more sustainable, to be coordinated in our efforts to help those animals. So that was a good day. My worst day also happened early in my career with the Nova Scotia SPCA, but there was an incident with an animal, and it was very unfortunate. And the minister at the time, Keith Caldwell, I got called to his office, and I was sitting in his office, and he was new in his position, I was new in my position, and social media was going crazy. And essentially, we had a lot of work to do around enforcement. So we hold the responsibility to enforce the Animal Protection Act around the province. And so that was a pretty bad day. But even from your worst days, it is actually usually on your worst days that you learn the most about how you need to move forward and what needs to be accomplished. So after that day, they recognized sort of the financial deficiencies that the Nova Scotia SPCA had to perform their work in the community, and so we were able to negotiate more revenue to hire more enforcement officers and come up with a process for that. So it was a bad day, but it ended up being very positive for us.
When I reflected on the question, my first response or my first reaction was, I don't look at work that way. It's not a good day, a bad day thinking in my mind. It's more, you know, what I've come to know about myself, and I think is probably a fairly strong truism, is, you know, you want your days to be a challenge. You want them to be interesting. You want to enter into an environment where you can thrive and try different things and experience different challenges. It's what creates growth. It's what really is human in many ways for us. So I'm glad that every day presents a unique challenge and that there are days that are more difficult than others, but I don't see them as good or bad per se. You get some great wins along the way, you know, and there's some things that you really feel you're making some accomplishments, and at other things you feel like you really have to do, you know, continue to work at them. And some of these are very long term. You know, so the reality is most of the time, literally at the end of the day, I reflect on the day and ask myself, was this useful today? Was it meaningful what we did? What else could we have done? That's more my reflection of the day rather than is it good or bad. You know, at times there are crises that you face and they're difficult to overcome and you have little control over some of them. But, you know, as I will parrot the message here, I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing per se. It's more an understanding of how you learn to navigate those, and the wins come when you overcome those adversities. They're real, they're gonna happen all the time, but I think of them as a challenge. They're interesting. It's what makes life interesting, otherwise it'd be pretty boring. Anyway, that's my view of the one. Thank you.
I sort of have the same view as Philip. You know, my personal motto is everybody deserves to have a good day. So, and that includes myself. So if I want to narrow it down, I would say that September 18th, 2018 was probably one of my best, most satisfying days at Easter Seals, because that is the day after being closed for 3 months to move from one location to a standalone, purpose renovated, fully accessible building with a cafe and room for everyone, was probably one of the best days of seeing the faces of the people that come to this facility every day, and many of them for decades, come in and see their new workspace and just seeing the looks on their faces. And that was a pretty special day, just not for myself, but for staff. And I'd say probably one of the most, COVID was very difficult on persons with disabilities who already feel fairly isolated, socially isolated. So I would say the first day when I had to make a decision about Camp Tignish, which is really the only fully accessible, barrier-free camp for kids, youth, and adults in the province, in making that decision for the first time in 84 years that it wasn't going to run that summer, because this is their vacation. This is their way of doing some, what they consider able-bodied people to do normal, and that's recreational fun in an overnight camp. So that same day paired itself the year after, when we realized in 2021 that there was just no way that we were going to be able to run it again. So they're not failures. They're circumstances that I had no control over, but that doesn't negate from the fact that it was very difficult on me to make that decision, and very difficult for the staff to relay that and to live that time as well. Thank you.
So to bounce off what Philip's sentiment in our second question, those of us who came up through the hospitality industry may have experiences working for unfavorable leadership. So to counter that, what is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
That's a hard question, because I believe that you need more than one, but if there is one that I can recommend, I mean, as a characteristic in the leader, is honesty. And I say that because, I mean, it's even, I want to quote Mark Twain on this, and what he said is that you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. And so, you know, whatever you do, like, be honest about it. Be honest with people. Then you get a lot further in what you're trying to do. And in fact, what I've found is that people want to work with you, want to associate with you, and that's good. You know, and I know it comes from that. And there's others that I feel that are very important too, like transparency. And in my world, in my community, fairness is vitally important. You know, and for sure, respecting your staff. You know, and the more respect they get, the more good work they'll do for you.
So I agree with Chief Paul. There was many, so it's very difficult to pick just one. But when I thought about it from the point of view of leadership, being able to lead, it's being able to lead staff, to have people follow you, to believe in you. So the one that I came up with as important, sort of across the board, is stability. So I, in my position, need to project stability. You know, people need to feel safe in their work environments. They need to, you know, when you're stable, people can trust you, or they feel trust for you, because life is chaotic. Working in the not-for-profit, in the political world, in all worlds, particularly during these times, there's a lot of chaos, and people are in chaos personally, they're in chaos professionally, organizational chaos, and so for you to be able to project stability, therefore a safe place to be, and confidence, it allows people the mind space to be able to do their work and to have faith in where you're taking them and confidence in where you're taking them. And so if you're stable, they feel more stable. So yeah, that's what I had.
I'm also going to cheat a little bit because one word can't do it. I'm going to bundle these as one concept. The idea of empathy, the idea of active listening, and a mantra that we have in our organization that we live by, the idea of being eager to lend a hand, do whatever is needed to help colleagues. Look, as a leader of an organization, when you need to get things done, it really, in the end, is not about the leader per se. It's really about the team. It's really about the strength that you have behind you with people that are really helping deliver on all of the programs and the services and the needs. My job is not to try and do their job by any stretch. My job is to make sure, though, that we set the conditions that help them thrive. And so, that's where I come down to the idea of empathy. It's well beyond the job itself. It's really about understanding their personal interests, their needs, what's happening in their lives, and how you can support it. That idea of active listening is paired with that. You can't really do it without really making that a focus of how you work. I mean, active listening is not a simple skill, to be clear. It really does mean having an open mind, thinking critically about it, trying to respond in a way that's suited to the person's needs. And that's where the helping hand comes in. I mean, in the end, when people need help in one form or another, just as one does as a CEO. So, your goal is to really try to do what you can to help them excel. And that helping hand thing can take on many forms, but it is the mantra. Like, it's an open door policy that has to be the priority. Make sure that people have the conditions they can thrive, and then things turn out quite well.
I never ask anybody, any staff member, anyone, to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So if that means unplugging a toilet, taking out the garbage, anything along those lines, you're never too big to lend a helping hand, be part of a team, because that's how you lead, and people will respect you for that. My superpower actually is resiliency. I have resiliency in both my personal life and my professional life. So I'm able to adapt quickly. I'm able to figure out a way forward. And I'm able to deflect a lot of the noise that's around me. And I do that in various ways, through self-care, through having extraordinary people in my life and around me, supporting me. Because if I'm not the best that I can be, I'm not going to be able to lead effectively or with care. And that's important to me as a leader. Personally, that's important to me.
Are there any resources you could recommend to help students gain more knowledge and insight into how to advance in their careers to eventually become executive level management?
Well, first of all, I want to let you know that I take out the garbage. So, I feel it's important to be open to new things, learning, have an open mind, and have respect for the people that you deal with, and say lifelong learning is very important. So stay in school as long as you can. You will do nothing but help. I also believe that I think being part of implementing inclusivity, that in my case anyway, that you learn more about the Indigenous history in Canada. And I believe that it'll open your minds for sure and probably make you a better person, because you would end up having a better understanding of why we are where we're at to this day. We still live on reserves. So we have a ways to go to reconcile our relationships, and that everybody becomes equal. And equality to me is not being the same as you. Allow me to be Mi'kmaq. That's when equality occurs. Allow people to be who they are and respect that. There are differences, but I firmly believe that they can be overcome. The community of Membertou is proof of that. Thank you.
So, in terms of resources, yes, education is important. Having that, building your skill sets is important. But I want to talk about what I think is one of the most important things that an individual can do to get themselves the experiences that they need to move forward in their career, is volunteering. So, yeah, I work for a nonprofit. Yeah, we need volunteers. This is not my pitch to get you to volunteer for the Nova Scotia SPCA. But it's about understanding that when you're volunteering for an organization, there's so many organizations that need help. You can align yourself with an organization you feel passionate about. There are so many opportunities that will come to you when you work with those organizations, opportunities to lead, because there is real need, but you will have some amazing experiences. You know, I have volunteered my whole life, and I mean, I had experiences. The one volunteer experience that I had that helps me to this day is I volunteered with the crisis center, so on a phone line. And I did that for a couple of years. I had to stop because it sort of was changing my personality in not good ways. But the experiences like how to de-escalate, to deal with crisis, you know? And then there's other charities that I worked for where it's like, I'm, you know, Drop Zone, you know, volunteering with Drop Zone, just the coordination, the logistics, the understanding what's important when you're dealing with, you know, people's galas, building a gala, you know, the attention to detail that you need when you're putting out the invites. Like there's so many skills that I have learned through my volunteer activities growing up that have helped me today. You just can't underestimate the opportunities that exist for you to learn in those circumstances. That's it.
I have proof in front of me that the message she just supplied is what my answer partially was. But I want to stress the point here as well. I wrote down, I strongly recommend approaching employers to look for opportunities to volunteer, be part of projects. And I want to stress the point here too. I don't believe in not getting paid for work done, for sure, but there is something different here about volunteering. It's giving you access and privilege to these experiences. You may not otherwise get those opportunities. And the other reality about it is that in the end, it's the experience that matters as well as your attitude. You know, when you're looking at your long-term trajectory on what you want to do for a career, as you enter other work opportunities, attitude will pay off a lot. It's really a demonstration of your commitment, your interest, your grit in wanting to try these things and take risks, as we've heard before. So volunteering is one of those singular, powerful things you can do. It's easy to do. I tell you, if you knock on a door of nearly any operation out there, if they're of any value, they'll be more than eager to find a way to fit you in and give you some opportunities. And the one thing I'm going to reiterate from a comment we heard earlier, and I think this ties to this point about volunteering, that it really is about putting in the time. And I don't mean this sort of in a negative way. There are no shortcuts. You really do need to experience things in order to gain the skills, to understand them, to really get the depth of being able to manage in those contexts. So the more that you can get your hands on, the better. And knocking on people's doors and asking for these things should be the least of your concerns. I tell you, they're going to welcome you with open arms for the most part.
Volunteering is so important. Employers look at resumes. They don't only look at what you've done in school or done professionally. They look at what you do what's important to you as a person. So I always go to that part of the resume and look and see where people have volunteered. One of the best things you can do as a young person is to approach whatever issue or company or whatever you're interested in, and join the board. Ask to join the board of directors, because that is like a training ground, because you will learn about operations, you will learn about resource development, you will learn about governance, and that's important because many employers expect and encourage their employees to sit on boards and give back to the community. So it's really important that you look at that. You know, I've volunteered all my life, and you know, I started out you know, applying for boards. Now boards come to me and say, will you sit on our board? I just walked away after 6 years of this university is very important to me. I was president of the Alumni Association, on the board of governors, and 6 years of volunteer work. And now I sit on the Chamber of Commerce for Halifax. But there will come a point where in your career, as you get more seasoned, that people will start looking at you because you've networked, you volunteer, and they want that energy on their board. So really, if you can join a board of directors, and sometimes issues just pick you. If you've had an illness or a disability, or you're passionate about animals or children. There's all kinds of wonderful organizations that really look for the youth and the young perspective instead of having old white men on boards. So thanks.
So mentorship is often cited as an important factor in success. How would a recent graduate starting out in his or her career find a mentor?
I believe that mentorship is a very important tool for you to advance and learn more. It's important that you find a mentor that has similar values that you do. And the mentor that you find or look for, it doesn't have to be an old guy that's on the board like me, you know, and, you know, but listen to people that have that experience, and like, and they don't have to, you talk to your peers, you learn that way. But being, Joanne said that, but being on boards, you find people that have similar values, and they usually have good advice that would be very helpful to you. So I have a number of mentors, including the staff that work with me, you know, because they're very good, smart people, like, you know, and you know, don't throw away good advice. I'll give you one that really astute mentor, and you probably would know them all if I just named the company, know the person, if I just name, is into about 30 different things, but let's say it's in the trucking business. And I remember, like, when we were trying to get advice on dealing with the commercial banks, the big five, as they called them. And he told me, he said, you know, the banks, or any financial system, particularly those, so he said, don't trust them. Don't trust them, but use them all. Okay, so I think that was one of the best advice I've gotten, and we learned to even syndicate loans with a number of banks and other financial institutions. So it's always good to have a respectful and ongoing communicative relationship with financial institutions. It is very important, particularly when you have issues with the company you have or the organization that you work for. You know, to be able to pivot to another avenue or another way of resolving the issues that you have. Thank you.
I struggled with this because I'm not sure if I'm really keen on like mentors, or maybe it's just my perspective and it's like people think of a mentor as like having like one mentor. But then I'm thinking that I do believe in mentors, I just think about it in a different way. So when you have those experiences, when you're out there volunteering, when you're out there, you know, building your career and your relationships, you will run into people who, even like from across a room, like you can hear them speak, you watch them engage, you know, at the table that they're sitting at. And, you know, you get closer in proximity to them because of the work that you do. I would say that a lot of my mentors, I don't know if I call them mentors, but I would say that a lot of people that I admire, they probably don't know it because I didn't talk to them about it. But what I tend to do is like I watch people. So I watch people again. Like I would like to figure out how they tick, what they're doing, how did they motivate that person to do what they needed them to do, and I emulate them. So I watch people and I watch how they work, how they get what they need, and when their tactic works, or when, you know, I think of it in terms of a tactic or a strategy, you know, I'll emulate it. Yeah, so that's sort of what I do. I watch what people are doing and I pick up things that they're doing that work that I think lend to their success in an organization and their success with people. So.
Again, we share some similar comments here, but there were two ways I was looking at this question when we were given them in advance. One is, I mean, first and foremost, I cannot think in my 30-year career in this job alone of ever singularly thinking of one mentor that I looked at per se. You know, in the end, my reflection was this is really about how you learn and how you look at the world around you. I mean, every day, every experience can present something, and it's intriguing. So, you know, you attend an event, or you're sitting around the table with people that are new, and you hear messages, or even something you might hear on a radio program or something, and you think, that intrigues me. There's something curious about it. I want to know more. It's more that sense of exploration and that idea of wanting to understand what it is about it that you know, that's curious about it. So on one hand, I just wanted to answer this question by saying it's about your own interest in thinking about what is it that intrigues you? What is it around you any given day that makes you think, I want to know more about it, pursue it? That's what I see as a kind of mentoring exercise, if you like. It's more self-directed rather than external. On the other hand, there are people that see a lot of value in having attached themselves to people in mentoring roles. First of all, I don't think it's ever a single person, but then I would strongly suggest that what you need to do is think carefully about what your expectations are in that role. The personality has to fit, what their experiences have to fit. So again, it's a bit of a self-reflection thing. What is it that you want in someone else to help, and then focus on who those people are, not a singular person, to pursue it. So it's I don't know if that's helpful, but in the end, it's much a self-exploratory exercise.
Well, if you're a student of this university, you're very lucky because there is mentorship here within this university, particularly the one I speak to is the Alumni Association. So if you're a fourth-year student, you can go to the Alumni Association and they will match you with a graduate of this university in the field of study in which you both have graduated. So I have mentored 3 young women, and I still mentor the last one, even though I'm not on the board anymore. We just had a conversation a couple of days ago. And she knows that she can email me or call me anytime and just be a sounding board. Personally, you know, I think it's really important, particularly for women, to have mentors, to have women who have blazed the path that you want to blaze as well. So when I ran for political office, I looked up every current, former candidates, elected women, took them to lunch and picked their brain because I wanted to know. When I was elected, Ramona Lumpkin was my mentor because we would go out to lunch, the cone of silence would go over our table, and I could vent and ask anything I needed to ask in someone that I truly admired, someone that I truly trusted, and I knew that whatever she would give me back, I would use in my career. Sister Joan O'Keefe was my first mentor in 1990. She's the one who put me on the path to university. I still, she's my sounding board to this day. So it's really important to have someone that has no ulterior motives, is truly behind you and helping lift you up to your success, and someone that, eventually you'll become. I look back at a couple of generations now of people behind me, and, I get asked quite a few times to mentor, and if I can, I will. If it's not something that I have any expertise in, I simply want to be true to that person. But it's really important to give back in that way. I've had the advantage of it, and I think it's really important that I impart some pearls of wisdom if I can. Thank you.
If someone within your organization was being considered for their first leadership position, what advice would you offer that person?
I think leadership is, well, it doesn't have or depend on what educational background that you have. It certainly helps a lot, but you're still who you are, and getting those qualities, it's in you already. It's a matter of getting it out. I remember going to the Cody Institute at St. FX University quite a while back, and there was two streams that they had. One was social development, the developmental stream. The other one was the leadership. Of course, I went over to the development side because I like development, but the professors were able to convince me that I should be taking the leadership stream. And I'm so forever grateful that they convinced me to do that, because I believe that that's a big part of me being successful to become chief of Membertou and to be able to do what we're doing. And I believe that great leaders have a strong vision. And with that vision, they work with their team, work with their staff that share that vision. This is an example of how Membertou has been successful. And the last thing, again, it was brought up before, very, very important again, always be truthful. No bullshit. Thank you.
I like no bullshit. So the advice that I would give an individual who is being given an opportunity to enter into a leadership position is to approach it with curiosity. So I don't, if somebody within our organization is being elevated to a leadership position, it's because I believe that they have aptitude. It's not because I believe that they already know what they're doing and they know the job and they'll be good at doing the functions of the job that exist. It's because I believe they have aptitude to learn, to grow. So that position, I don't want to remain stagnant. You know, I always tell them that it'll take them a year. Anyone coming into organization, I tell them it's going to take you a year to really feel comfortable and be good at this job, because there's seasons to the job. And so it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay not to have all of the answers, but you need to be curious. You need to be able to want to put in the work, find out what the answers are, to ask questions. You know, and I believe it's been said earlier, like when I'm in a room, I do not want to be the smartest person in the room. There needs to be people around me that have different strengths, different skill sets. So I always hire for my weaknesses. And it is important. I think a lot about when I'm building my team and what I want from that team. And having a good attitude, one of the most important things to have is a good attitude. To be curious, have a good attitude, don't be a know-it-all, because we all know we all don't have the answers. So don't pretend you do. That's it.
Again, I mean, I certainly support all the comments that were made. This is the kind of question we could spend a whole afternoon looking at more carefully. It's hard to narrow it down simply, but my reflection on it maybe builds on the comments that were just made. And in a way, I think one of the most important factors is your interpersonal skills. Now, that may sound a little simple and sublime, perhaps, but in the role of leader, what transcends maybe the other kinds of employment opportunities in an organization is there's so much of your time, if not all your time, is dedicated to how you interact with your teams, because they all rely on you in one way or another. To succeed, those interpersonal skills will matter greatly. You really have to hone in on them, understand them, make them a priority. I could go on about a whole bunch of other things, but I'll just agree to support the comments made because I would add those to my list and amongst others.
I have a few here. First of all, take an HR course. HR is my weakest link as a leader. If you have toxicity in your workplace due to interpersonal relationships within your staff, it will kill your organization. It will kill the culture of the organization. It will dampen innovation. It will fester competition, resentment, and it will be so not productive that it really is really like a cancer. So that's what I would do. Think outside. Always think outside of the box. Always have a sense of humor. You have to have a sense of humor. I personally believe that leaders are born and they learn other stuff. I think if you don't have that fire within you to be able to lead or to inspire or to collaborate, it's very difficult, regardless of what you learn out of a book. I already said, don't say it's always been done that way. And just be yourself. I'm going to tell a little story. I'm going to tell it. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from a man. I had no idea who he was, and it was in a Walmart. Before I got elected, I had a fundraiser, and I needed to buy a strapless bra. And I had no experience buying a strapless bra, so my partner and I went to Walmart, and she went one way, and I went to the strapless bra section. So I'm going up and down the aisleways, and I get to the end of one, and I see this beautiful black bra with pink piping on the outside, but it has a zipper. And I'm thinking to myself, how does this work? So I take it out, and I put it up here, and I'm trying to manipulate the zipper and everything. And my partner comes around the corner. She takes one look at me and just dissolves into laughter, like guffawing laughter. And I'm like, what? What is wrong with you? And she said, Joanne, it's a pencil case. And I looked at it, and then I looked at the package, and sure enough, and then my next thought is, why the hell are pencil cases at the end of a bra section? But while this is all going on and I'm realizing that I'm standing there trying to fit into a pencil case, this elderly gentleman comes along, looks at me and says, "Lady, you do you." And I thought, okay. So every time after that, as minister, whenever I did an interview and whenever it was on the 6 o'clock news, I always had this vision in my head, even as I was giving the interview, that this elderly man is sitting there eating his TV dinner with his wife, who in my head I named Ethel, and he's saying to Ethel, Ethel, look, there's the moron who thinks she can wear a pencil case. So it's really important that you never take yourself too seriously. You have a sense of humor, because that just ingratiates you with people. It really, really does. And that is really an effective characteristic of a leader. Thank you.
So that's hard to follow up, but I just wanted to jump in and say that I do believe that while leaders are born, there is actually a leader in all of us. We're all different. I believe that, I have skills and strengths. I'm comfortable putting myself out there, but I have a lot of leaders in my organization in different departments, and they might be quiet, right? There's quiet leaders, there's loud leaders, but I just want to encourage everybody to find out what your passion is, what your skill is, what you think you have to offer an organization, and to hone that and bring that with you every day to work, because there is a place for you.
Okay, so we just have a few moments left for our last question. As everyone here has probably experienced, no aspect of the workplace escaped the pandemic untouched. How has your leadership style changed since COVID-19? And if so, how has it changed?
I remember at a time when the COVID-19 issue has become really serious, and it's probably one of the first decisions I made because of that. I was in Toronto airport and waiting for a flight home, and at the same time we were having this tournament, and this tournament, hockey tournament, has been going on for close to 50 years. They call it the Wally Bernard Youth Indigenous Hockey Tournament, and the tournament started, but just two cases of COVID were just exponentially spreading. So I had to make a choice of whether or not to close that tournament down. And I remember the chief from PEI, he was on his way to bring his son to the tournament, and he was asking me, is it on or not? I said, well, I'll get back to you. We're still talking about it. But I ended up still at Toronto Airport closing the tournament down in Membertou. And the teams were from all over the Atlantic, and I really didn't get any complaints about that because it was just new to everybody, and very, very concerning. So with Membertou and its workforce there, we certainly had to, I call it pivot to another way of managing. In wasn't usual times, although we had a number of people still working at the office, and for the essential services, we laid off quite a number of people because the revenues were drying up, and a lot of people that stayed on, we agreed to have them work from home, and it turned out pretty good, and we didn't really lose too much work time. It taught us, it helped us to become more adaptable on changes like that, and we realized that these incidents will be happening again. So we feel that we're much more prepared and resilient, and I think we gain resilience on with ourselves because of what we had to go through. But very proud of our management and our staff, where they helped very much in Membertou accomplishing and not losing. We lost revenues, but not where we thought it would be. It was still in the millions, but we were able to still survive, and we didn't have to close any of our businesses down, and we've pretty well come back where we were before the COVID-19. So we learned very much to adapt and work with the staff and listen to their concerns. Thank you.
So it's not just like the magic word COVID, like have things changed since COVID? It's sort of with COVID or the advent of COVID, I mean, there's so many things that have happened. It's impacted our economies even now today with inflation. And so we continue to keep rolling, and pivot is the best word because we keep having to pivot. With the Nova Scotia SPCA, we don't have, we're not able to just decide we're not going to feed the animals anymore. We still have buildings full of animals. People still need to go into work. We had to pivot in the way that work was done. There was a lot of work to figure out people's schedules. So it was, we learned again from all of these things that happen that are different, or I don't like saying the word negative, but perceived as negative. There's a lot of positive things that came out of it. We've learned, different ways that we can manage our business, schedule our people, opportunities we can give to our staff now. I'm glad that we can be more comfortable to send our staff to work from home, and that they have that ability. It's a benefit to us, it's a benefit to them. It made us, I've always been in a sort of outside of the box thinker, and maybe COVID just gave me this opportunity to go even more outside of the box. But there were a lot of good lessons that we learned because of COVID, and I think that our management practices with our staff have improved. So, these are still weird times. It's never going to go back to the way that it was. I'm just waiting for inflation to go down, and I have a lot of meetings with investors about what's going to be happening for the future, because I believe in being proactive instead of reactive, and I do think that difficult times are coming. I do think that next year is going to be difficult, and we sort of continue to look to see how we have to pivot and how we have to change so that we can be successful, so that we can protect our staff, protect the communities, and protect animals.
I like the question. Again, it's one of those I wish we could spend much more time on. Again, just a reflection here. As an organization, this is very close to home for us. I spend all of our time, most of our time is spent informing and recommending to governments, to associations, to businesses, et cetera, how to respond to the impacts of COVID on its workforce. And I do this globally, let alone in Canada and beyond tourism. So on one hand, when I read the question, I was thinking about it through the lens of what's happened and changed in terms of the workforce. On the other hand, the question asks about leadership style, and I think there's a confluence here, right? In the end, leadership is so much about managing people. So when I get down to my punchline here, I basically say, in principle, I don't think my leadership style has changed. The values and the understanding about managing people have been heightened in terms of better management practices we're seeing, but those should have existed pre-COVID in some respects. So for me, it's more about the idea that COVID perhaps has presented a bit of insight, or some might call it an opportunity, or an understanding about the human characteristics associated with managing people, and how one has to be far more understanding of the kinds of values and principles in managing people themselves. And so in that sense, I think there's been changes out there, but would it change my leadership style? Not necessarily. It's just heightened an appreciation and understanding of it, and hopefully those things have benefited people along the chain.
Like everybody, I hated COVID. I went to work every day because I was alone in a building, but all my staff, some could work from home, some can't, because they work directly with persons with disabilities. We couldn't run any sports programs for the kids. We had to cancel the camp. It was very difficult in many different ways. So out of all this, we never had to lay anyone off. We were able to take advantage of federal programs. We had to reset our fundraising goals and our activities. And I wouldn't say that my leadership style has changed. It might be a little more flexible with work at home if able to be done and there's a good relationship of trust. But the labor force has changed, whereas I would get 40 resumes for a position, I might only get 10 now. So that is very different. Personally, my patience has gotten thinner with a lot of things. And anti-vaxxers, the word convoy, the misuse of the word freedom, all of the things that came with COVID that was able to ignite due to this pandemic. So personally, my patience may be a little waning, but other than that, it really hasn't changed much. And I'm realistic. I'm sunsetting in my career in the next, well, at least the next decade, if not before. So, I'm okay. I'm done. I like where I'm at. I like how I lead. I'm at the point now that I hand the baton on to people so that they can learn new things, and I try to help whoever I can. So, you get to that point. Terry, you're in it for life. I know. And just in closing up here, I want everyone to really recognize the true brilliance of Chief Terry Paul, because he is brilliant. He truly is brilliant. And when you look at the economic development of Membertou and what he has able to do in business and in culture and in reconciliation, in being a player at all government levels, and building this huge economic success, one of the most successful in Canada, he really is quite brilliant. So I just wanted to say that.
I was waiting for an opportunity to say that as well, because as I mentioned, I'm from Northern British Columbia, and I wish that the First Nation communities in BC could have your mentorship. So.
Okay, so at this point, we have time for one or two student questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and someone will come to you with a microphone.
How do you learn to set example when you want to put your things in order without extreme supervision, when you're a person that pays so much attention to detail without discouraging your subordinates?
I don't know if this is helpful, but I think it's picking up on a few points that we heard on the panel today. As a leader, I find that I have this duality, or the need for this duality. On one hand, focused on the vision, the mission, thinking in that strategic lens is really important. But at the same time, any given day, I get very focused on the detail. Both matter greatly. You can't achieve the vision without really understanding that detail and understanding it well and intervening where it's necessary. So on one hand, it's more a work style, a way of looking at the challenges holistically that I think matter. And in that sense, you can see progress and you understand where to put your attention over time.
Just to add to that, all of that comes down to building a relationship with your leadership team. So it is again about managing people as they are managing their portfolios so that you can reach your strategic goal. It's about ensuring that there's good reporting in place. I'm not a micromanager. It is hard for me to let go of a few things, but it is about an individual wanting to be a leader in our organization, building a relationship with me, and communicating with me in a way where I feel that I have understanding of what you're doing and where you're at with the project that gives me comfort. Then I can let go and I know you've taken care of it. And again, just like I mentioned before, in those little projects, about having those little successes. So no project is small. So any project you have, any responsibility you're given, it's an opportunity to shine, and they'll just, when you're successful with those, they'll get bigger and bigger. And that's how you end up on the management team. And once you have that management team, it is about just leading by example, but it's the example that you've had with them from the very beginning.
I very much don't like to get into the weeds. So I like to give people the opportunity to do their jobs. And so I don't micromanage either. And I delegate quite a bit. And then I can focus on the bigger picture. So if you have micro stuff that needs to be done to feed into the macro, then giving people the opportunity to shine and do their jobs is how I lead.
Okay, so we have time for one more student question, if there is one.
Thank you so much for sharing this morning. My question is, thinking about all the facets of your life, what would be 2 best practices as it relates to time management and organization that you have?
It's a thinker.
Time management, boy, that's a wild card. Look, it's interesting when you're in the role of a CEO. Well, I'm speaking for myself here. You can walk in any given day and you clearly have an agenda set. Your day is mapped out, but it rarely manifests the way it's recorded on your computer or your paper, because your responsibility, of course, is to respond to the needs that arise and to be there to support those activities. So from a time management point of view, from my lens, it's really about learning how to adapt your day and your time in order to facilitate all those demands. So sometimes not everything on my calendar will get done that day, but it doesn't mean it's lesser a priority. It's just that I learn to adjust and shift those activities. That's a reality, and I wouldn't move beyond that, because as I said earlier in my comments, first and foremost, it's really about being a support to the team and responding to their needs, and I will prioritize that. So it doesn't sacrifice moving on those other fronts. It really is just about how to readjust or recalibrate the day, any given day. That's time management, in my books anyway.
So I want to echo that. It is about being able to quickly adjust your priorities. So always understanding what's happening in your organization, and when you have that list of responsibilities, being able to prioritize quickly, because you are not going to be able to accomplish everything you want to, but you have to be able to quickly adjust and quickly change your priorities.
We have in our procedures that helps us manage time with our staff. We have time clocks for a number of the staff. Management is a bit different, but like in my day, like it's not 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. Like I'm working before I go to work and go to the office, and even after, and it's on weekends too, because of what we do and what we're involved in. And everybody's absolutely busy, you know, so we really don't have that concern because our work gets done, you know, and this is the way we are. This is why we have the ISO certification, you know. In fact, on top of that, we have a financial certificate, again, first in the country, and that enables us to be able to get very competitive loans from a number of institutions, including the Big Five. You know, so our processes allow that. Of course, there are times and there are issues with some of the staff, and we just don't let them adrift. We work with them on whatever that issue is and help them resolve it. You know, so we mentor them, we work with them, we coach them. The HR department is very involved in a person's success or not. There are times when we have to let people go because they're not performing or there's some other issues with that, but time management, very important. But a lot of our, especially management, doesn't go by the clock. We certainly put in a lot more than what the clock would require us to do. And just by the way, you know, time doesn't exist. Okay? Yeah. Time is man-made. So to me, there's lots of time. Thank you.
I was going to say that I have terrible boundaries when it comes to time because it's like we don't work. I don't believe anybody here probably works like 9 to 5, but terrible boundaries. So the rule for my team is that if I text you, it's a 911. If I email you, because it could happen at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, maybe if I email you, it can wait till later. But if I text you, you need to respond. So that might help.
And if I could add 2 things here, I mean, quickly, one of the facts is that, and I was just reminded, again, this is the whole afternoon discussion, but time management is a curious factor because in a way, it's not about the amount of time you spend on something that you're measuring. The focus for sure is on the outcomes. Are you meeting those objectives? And what are those milestones? So, you know, it's very fluid in that sense. We don't look at I don't look at my day as X is going to get done and Y is going to get done and we'll end up with Z kind of thing. It's more, it's incremental. Are we meeting our aims? Are the goals getting set? Are those outcomes where we focused on? And so in that sense, it's a very fluid thing. Yeah, and by the way, a good tip about the 911 thing, we put at the front of our messages and our emails, 911, 611, or 311, and it codifies for people the urgency of responding. Just saying.
Good idea.
Okay, so I would like to thank our panelists for their time, knowledge, and expertise. And I just have a small token of our appreciation to present you with. And if everyone could just remain seated as our next panel will just start in a few minutes. But if we could give our panelists just a warm round of applause to thank them.